healthcare, women's rights, immigration.
Yeah, and you might start seeing closings.
What is your thoughts on this whole massive deportation?
Yeah.
Right? What's your feelings after the historic results last night? What's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, a couple of things. One is that, again, we live the privilege to live in a country where we can elect our leaders, and we can basically assert our rights in regards to voting and so forth, and that is a privilege. So I think that's one of the positive takeaways, that we're able to basically exert our rights in regards to that, and it's a protected rights. How the results of the election? Well, again, that's how democracy works. Democracies are messy, but you have to respect the outcomes, and and then you keep it. It's a process. It's not the end. So again, you also still have continuous elections. Some races are still outstanding, and again, we're a federal structure, so we have states.
All right, so what do you say for the people that are feeling, down today, or for the people that are feeling like they're grieving? For some people, that's how they feel.
Absolutely, and they have every right to feel that way. Just like with anything, when you put a lot of effort into it and hopes, and these are challenging times. So there's a couple of things. One is absolutely acknowledge those feelings, and they're valid. Don't accept anyone gaslighting them. Own those feelings. The upside is that you have power of agency. Do something about that. What makes these feelings worse is when you have feelings of hopelessness. But this is the power of a democracy, is that it's a continuous things. Particularly when you think about civil rights or any type of change, it's not quick, and so it requires constant pressure on either side.
Right.
So it's a give and take, whether it be compromise or not. But the most important thing is to, again, start thinking about ways that you can stay engaged in a healthy way, but don't give up hope. Maintain some agency.
Right. We've been going through this for years. I mean, since the civil rights movement, people have gone through even worse.
Even worse.
We got to pick ourselves up.
And the thing is that, from a legal perspective, it's a constant battle, and that's why it's very stressful. You win some, you lose some cases. In some cases, you think you have it in the bag, and then you lose it on jury, or you leave it on a technicality. But you keep going. You keep trying to find ways to make incremental changes, and it can be frustrating. So that's why it's important that you don't feel alone. You find support and people that you can celebrate with. That they understand you. Even in a marriage, you're going to have, or in relationships, you're going to have difference of opinion about things. The question is that how you handle those differences. Right. We're different, but the question is how you evaluate it. Is that how you put value to it? Is it more about inferiority, superiority, better, greater or lesser? That's where the issues come in. So I think it's important to have people with different perspectives and stuff, because it also helps you understand. But if the perspective, though, is one of just disrespect, you should have bright lines.
Well,
again, if it is there to demean you and stuff, you don't need that. But if it's just a basic differences in trying to solve a problem, that's something different.
Right, but in this case, now with this new coming administration, what are the particular things that people have been, obviously very concerned about? Just sort of a quick rehash on whether it be healthcare, women's rights.
Well, it runs the gamut. And that's with any change in administration. There's always going to be
immigration.
Some level of, and I don't think we need to go through all of them, because there's some level. But I think there's some things that have not been really talked or discussed about in regards to, particularly in healthcare. So there is a real possibility that availability of healthcare can become a challenge, especially if some of the like the Affordable Care Act and so forth, if those things get repealed or get restricted, it might become much more challenging, especially those with pre-existing conditions. Those challenges that could happen. But it depends. But that's a possible risk. Changes in regards to what Medicare covers. Again, that falls under administrative state, so under executive branch. So there's a lot of things that rules in regards to also payment schedules to physicians that can change because again, there will be budgetary issues. So those are some of the immediate or possible issues that will come up, particularly in healthcare, which can create downstream effects on rural hospitals. Because rural hospitals have survived because of expansion of Medicaid, particularly like in North Carolina. But if the federal government starts reducing its block grants or matching grants to Medicaid, that's going to put that downward pressure, and you might start seeing closings of hospitals that serve rural communities. And that might be an unexpected outcome.
All right, others?
Well, others are going to be costs of living in regards because of tariffs. So again, it depends. If it's as sweeping as we're talking about, it could be. What's interesting is that just right after the election, like certain monetary amounts, dollars compared to the dollar dropped. So like the Indian rupee, its values dropped. And it dropped so far that
is that related?
It's tied to the dollar. So certain currencies that are tied to dollar, the dollar became stronger upon.
I heard people talking about like their investments sort of went up.
Well, in the short term, but the question is that, again, that's all short term. See, the investment value because the market spiked, but the question is that when he comes to office, what are the policies that are going to be enacted? So, for example, again, if healthcare changes and you have hospitals now are under stress, and then you start having layoffs in the healthcare sector due to closings, the market, it doesn't matter that you get the short-term bump, and then it goes to a long-term. If they start cutting Medicare, to balance the budget, there's a lot of, it's really uncertainty that's going on. Immigration, we already know. That's already shared.
What is your thoughts on the talking about undocumented people that are going to be deported? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have to wait and see. Because that's a massive undertaking.
Right. The massive deportation.
Yeah.
Right,
and he promised to enact that within, once he comes to office. But it's going to take some time to mobilize that.
Right.
So it's going to have to require some sort of federal and state cooperation to do that. Because again, the number of people, we're talking about 10 million or more or so.
It's crazy.
That's a lot. And so that really requires, almost in some communities, door-to-door processes. And so, and again, that could be very disruptive economically too.
Right.
So
perhaps he said all those things just to get elected, and maybe none of that will actually happen.
Right.
We don't know.
Or they're just very difficult to coordinate because some things are, easier said than done.
Right.
Because again, we're talking about 50 states.
Right.
It's
America's
a lot.
America's huge.
Yeah. So it's a lot to because think about the amount of effort just to interdict drugs. So now you got to hunt down people on top of you already got your average everyday criminal and stuff. So again, you're diverting resources for a very specific, and that's a long term. It's not going to happen in months. It's going to take a couple of years to clear people out.
Right. Or taxes for people who don't make a lot of money may actually go up.
Yeah. Again, we don't know. So again, those are things. So I think that part of it is that there are a lot of things that are uncertain. There's a lot of things that are possible.
Right.
So basically, there's a lot it's unknowable. So I think that's where the anxiety is totally understandable. And so again, it's about looking for what things you can control, and in regards, particularly in taking care of yourself as well as your family and your loved ones. So but it's like with anything, change is inevitable. So this is just part of that change, and it's trying to, find ways where if there's some good that can come out of it, and in other ways, whether because again, it's also about you still have state government. So what's interesting in North Carolina is that even though North Carolina broke and
wasn't that crazy?
Voted for Trump, but the thing is though we're a split ticket. The governor's Democrat, the lieutenant governor's Democrat, the superintendent of education is a Democrat. So it's almost like every key office were Democrats. So you had where in the state,
but obviously the people majority are not Democrats.
well, but the majority voted
based
for Trump.
on the vote.
But you got to remember, we also have 30, and then we have a high percentage, over 30% of independents. I think that's got mixed. A lot of the analysis was between Democrat and Republican, but there's an independent group that moves.
Right.
So that's why it's a split ticket. See, whereas in other states, it's just straight down a ballot. So you have a Republican governor, Republican legislature, Republican, all this, that. So that's why it's, but here, this is why we have a very, purplish type of hue. It's like, even though we have Republican, but there's still that balance. It's not, we don't want to go all the way where it's 100%. We still want that type of mix. But the real key issue is that the rural areas are not getting the resources to lift their quality of life.
So we can understand their frustration, of course. Absolutely.
When we have hospitals closing, I mean, in some areas they have to travel 100 miles to get to a doctor. I mean, come on, that's not true equality and access to health care. That's still a critical issue.
So do you feel like she did not reach enough of rural America, or do you think just by being herself, certain things that she could not help, like being black, being a female, being a former prosecutor, are reasons why she could not have
I'm not qualified to talk about that stuff, because again, I don't have enough. I'm not an insider. I don't know. There are fantastic people that work or exist in that sphere of expertise. I don't like to talk about things that I don't have a good working knowledge of.
Right.
All I can say is that
anyway, do you feel
like
do you feel like she tried her best?
Again, I think she did. Again, it's one of those things. It's sort of like you do what you can with what you have, and she took her best shot, and it happens. I mean, and we talk about it because we even though it's a local office, we ran. We know it takes a lot of work, a lot of effort. I mean, we were up late at night, talking to people, knocking on doors. I mean, and that's us, just you and me doing that stuff. So yeah.
And for reference, Kenton ran for city council many years ago.
Yeah. So I mean, I understand from a local level, and that's just a small microcosm. So imagine you doing it for the whole country. So and in 90 days.
Right. Exactly. In 90 days.
It's insane. So I think in that way, if you look at it, it's like, it's a lot of ground to cover in such a short period of time. So you have to respect that.
Right.
But I love to sit there and do what they call autopsies and second guessing and stuff like that. Because again,
who's to know?
Who's to know? Because
only God knows.
When you're on the ground, when you're in it, it's different, right? And depending on the data and stuff that comes in. So, no, I think ultimately, that's the part of the thing that is to look forward versus looking back.
Right.
As
the
citizens.
fight continues, basically. Stand up for what you believe, regardless.
Regardless on whatever. But the most important thing is be authentic. So I think that's a matter of what perspective you have: progressive, liberal, conservative, whatever, centrist, liberal leaning, conservative leaning. I think the bottom line is that to treat each other with respect and with humanity. So you can still have differences in perspective, but still have that understand compassion in regards to values. And I think sometimes that's what gets missed in the
Right, like some of us are worried about the chaos that may come, as a result of this winning for certain groups of people, whether it be for the immigrants, whether it be for the people of color, whether it be for the LGBTQ community. There's a lot of marginalized communities that are worried.
Sure, and rightfully so. I mean, so again, to acknowledge that. And so I think that's where, again, is to look for agency, find ways that to be prepared for that, to be intentional in regards to how to respond to those type of pressures, and to get involved. And I think that's the thing, is that when you get involved and feel you can feel more and gain more control of it.
Right, but then there are those who might feel like, all right, we got involved, we voted, it didn't matter.
It does matter. No, see, that's the thing.
You know, I'm just saying, I don't personally believe that, but I know that's the sentiment that's
some
out
people,
there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, what's the point?
Yeah, and that's why most people don't vote, and that's part of the problem. But
Right.
the vote matters because, again, you're exerting your right. Whether you win or lose, the whole point of matter, it's sort of like this thing too. It's like the concept is that, you know, you don't win unless you try,
Right.
but you know you'll lose when you do nothing.
Right.
Right? So it's absolute guarantee you'll lose if you don't vote.
Right.
Right? But if you vote, that's at least then you're making an attempt, and so then you have a shot of winning. But you do nothing, so it's the same thing with anything in life. You got to give it a shot. Now, if you win or lose, at least you're in the game.
Right.
So stay in the game. You know, but why give up your right when other people in other parts of the world are dying for those rights?
Right.
Right? I mean, see, that's the thing. It's like we insulate ourselves to realize that in many ways we're very unique in the world. If you look at world history, the majority of the time, 98% of human history, the forms of governments have been authoritarian.
Right.
Either god kings, pharaohs, emperors, monarchs, papacy, theocratic. There's always been some sort of autocratic or authoritarian type of design.
Mm-hmm.
Very few times in history there's been some form of democratic structure.
Sure, and we're worried that democratic structure will last.
Yeah, well, that's why, because it's very fragile. That's the thing. It's because, again, if people don't stay involved, if it's always has assault, because you always have groups that want to take control. They don't want democracy,
right?
Because democracy's messy. They want full control,
right?
And so there comes shocks in time for it. So that's why it's so critical that, you know, again, is to keep these things in perspective. It's not the end. It's just challenges. Change is challenging, and so now it's about, again, finding ways to create agency, whether on a local level, helping locally people that, like, say, vulnerable communities, or getting involved on a state level, you know, or nationally if you have that capacity. So.
All right. Is that your final words?
My final words? No, I never have final words. But
all right. What are your final words?
My final words is don't give up hope. I mean, again, for those that
and congratulations to those whose party won.
Well, yeah,
you know what? We peacefully accepted.
Yeah. Well,
the Republicans won.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, it's democracy. So I think this is the thing, and that's why I teach students in media law, which is First Amendment and so forth, is that, again, the most important thing is that is the Constitution and the rights that we fundamentally have, that is not given by the government. We have those fundamentally, that's endowed in us, and so the Constitution protects us from the government infringing upon that. So the whole point is that we have the privilege of having elections, win or lose, and it's important that we continue that way to ensure democracy continues on. So you just keep the faith. Keep you know, doing good work and show compassion and help each other.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.